In today's video, I'm gonna teach you everything you need to know about calculating an offer. There are 3 parts to this video. 1 is how to calculate a max offer in the first place. 2 is how to estimate the repair cost because you need to do that to calculate the max offer. And 3 is how to estimate ARV, which you also need to calculate a good max offer. So once you know all those 3 things, you will know exactly what to offer on any single home that you see. And if you are new to the channel, my name's Justin Wrong. I'm a real estate investor and entrepreneur here in Las Vegas. I've made hundreds of videos teaching people about real estate, and the goal of this channel is to help you grow your money and mindset. Also, if you want to see more personal content, follow me on Instagram at JustinYou'reWrong. So what we are looking at right now is the exact calculator that I use to calculate my max offer. I'm gonna teach you exactly how it works, and I'm also going to run through a sample deal just so you know how the calculations work. A lot of investors out there will use just rule of thumbs in order to buy their deals, but I personally like to calculate every single deal individually so I know exactly where I need to be at for an offer in order to profit on a flip. Before I run through an example, let me just explain how the calculator works in general. So the calculator is broken up into a few parts. One is just the property information, the address, and also the ARV, minimum profit, purchase commission credit. So how this calculator works is broken up into a few parts. It pretty much works backwards from where you want to be. Here's how it works. In order for me to get my max allowable offer on a single property, I start with the ARV, what the home is worth after fixing up. I subtract out my minimum profit that I need to make on the property, and then I subtract out any other costs that are associated with the property or financing or anything like that. And when you do that, you come up with the max offer that you can pay for the home. So looking at the calculator, you see there's a section for ARV, there's a section for property cost, there's a section for money cost, and then once you have all of that, you can discover what your max offer is. So I'm gonna clear this out. So let's just run through some sample numbers. I'm gonna be teaching you as I go for what these terms mean and kind of the thought process behind all of them. So first thing we have is the address up top. You can always change this address if you'd like. Right now, I'm just gonna have it say 123 Main Street. Before we use a calculator for a sample deal, let me just give you some basic information. These light blue boxes, that's where you can enter your information in. These grays, they will auto-populate as well as this green. So read this right here at the very bottom. Everything in blue must be entered. Everything in gray and green will autofill. So don't change these gray or green boxes, just change the light blues. Next thing we got is the ARV. And if you don't know what the ARV is, it is the after repair value. And all that means is what is the home worth after it were to be fixed up. So for example, let's just say this home has an ARV after repair value of $300,000. That means if you buy this home and you fix it up, it's gonna be worth $300,000 after fixing up. Keep in mind, this is just an imaginary home. These numbers are very realistic, at least for my market. The next thing that we look at is the minimum profit. Now, how we calculate this, or how I do it, it's very simple. I take 10%, so 0.10, times the ARV, enter. And so my goal on every single property is to make at least 10% of the ARV for every property, with the exception of lower end properties. So for example, if this is a lower end property and the ARV is worth $150,000, I don't want my minimum profit to be $15,000. My base minimum profit is $20,000. So if I have an ARV of less than $200,000, my minimum profit will be $20,000. I don't care if the home is only worth $50,000, I wanna make 20 grand on it. And the reason why that's my standard is because 20,000 gives you a big enough buffer so if things go wrong, you're most likely not gonna get screwed and you're not gonna lose money. 20 grand is a pretty big buffer for most properties, most. So let me just move this back to $300,000 ARV and we can move on. The next thing that we look at is the purchase commission credit. Now this box is here if you are a realtor. If you are a realtor and you're representing yourself on the purchase, or if you're just referring it out to another agent and you're gonna be getting a referral commission, this is where you can enter what profit you would make as a realtor. Now, I'm not gonna add anything, I'm just gonna write a 0 because I'm not gonna be representing myself for the purchase. But if you were to ever represent yourself for the purchase, that's where you can enter any profit that you would gain as a realtor. The next sections that we're gonna look at are cost. Now, cost can be split up in 2 ways. One are property cost. all the things associated with rehabbing the property, selling the property, things like that for flips. There's also another cost that we have to look at, which is called money cost. Money costs are basically any cost that you have to pay for getting any financing on the home, like paying any private money lenders, hard money lenders, conventional lenders, any type of lenders that you have to pay, any interest or any service fees. This is where you enter that information. But first, let's start at the rehab cost. So now just for an example, let's just say that this property is 1,000 square feet. Everyone is going to estimate their rehab cost a little bit differently. Now how I do it is I use the square feet and I estimate based off that, depending on property condition. So for the rehab cost, let's say this is again 1,000 square feet home, and I'm gonna multiply that by $30 a square foot. Now that's just something that I typically will use in my market for a particular type of property. I'm not gonna go super in depth about estimating rehab cost. I can make a separate video on that. But just for an example, let's say the rehab cost $30,000 to fix up. Now we have a repair estimate that we can look at. The next thing that we're gonna look at are realtor commissions. And I have this automatically kind of set to 5% because when I have a realtor list the home for any flips that we have, I just do a 5% listing. So 2.5% commission goes to the buyer's agent, 2.5% commission goes to my listing agent. So I just have it set to this. If you ever have any difference, you can write 6% or 4% or whatever percent that you have. And as you can see, this realtor box, this commission box, it'll change. The next thing that we look at are the closing costs. Now, right now, I have it set for 2%, and that is 2% of this ARV, which gives me a $6,000 budget for closing costs. And I forgot to explain earlier, but the realtor commissions are the same way. This is 5% of this ARV. So that's just a simple budget for closing costs. The point is, you just gotta budget for something. I don't care if you budget 3%, 4%, whatever. Figure out on average, what are other investors in your area paying for closing costs, and then you can base it off of that. The next thing we want to budget for are just something for taxes, utilities, and insurance. We want to budget for those things. It doesn't have to be perfect. The whole point of this exercise and analyzing the deal using these numbers is to budget for something. And all this does is it takes 1% of the ARV, so we're budgeting $3,000 for any utilities or taxes or any insurance that you will have to pay if you're going to be flipping a home. The next thing that we look at for property cost are monthly HOA costs. Now, if you don't know what an HOA is, it's basically called a homeowners association. And this is for communities like condo communities or even some single family communities where they have associations and you have to pay an HOA fee every single month for them taking care of the exterior or the community or whatever it is. I personally have not bought in a homeowners association. Right now, I'm just gonna budget $0 for this, but if you did have a monthly fee that you needed to pay, that's where you enter this right here. So after entering all the property information, you can see right here, total property cost, we're at $54,000. Now I'd like to move on to the money cost. Now, like I said before, this is just any cost associated with financing the property and the purchase. First thing we're gonna look at is the loan amount. Now, for the loan amount, it's gonna be determined by a couple things. One is the purchase price right here. Two is what kind of down payment you need to put. So I haven't entered a purchase price just yet. Let me just add something. Let me call it $100,000 right now, just to put something there for the purchase price. But once I have a purchase price in, let me adjust this loan amount to what I typically look at for deals. So for all my deals right now, I've been using a lot of hard money and a lot of private money. So for this example, I'm just gonna take the example of using hard money. And most of the time, my hard money lender, they will lend me 90% of the purchase price. So how I calculate this is I write an equal sign, I take the purchase price, I click the purchase price there, I do the multiplication symbol, and then I multiply it by 90% because I know my lender, they allow me to put 10% down and they'll give me 90%. So that's how I'll calculate the loan amount. Press enter. That's the loan amount. And again, this is not an exact purchase price. We can change this, but I just wanted to put something. But the next thing we look at for the money cost is the hold time. How long are you going to hold on the property? So typically the hold time for flips, at least in my experience, I've held onto my homes anywhere between 4 months and 8 months. I would say a typical hold time that you can expect is anywhere between 6 and 12 months. All of mine have mostly been in 4 to 6 months, sometimes 8 if I have to evict a tenant. But just to have a general number in there, I think most of my flips will take 6 months or less. So I'm just gonna budget for 6 months. That number might be different for you in your market, I don't know. So just figure out what you wanna budget for. The point is, you gotta budget for something. You have to budget for some type of hold time. And if you don't know what a hold time is essentially how long you hold onto the property from start to the finish. So right when you buy it to right when you resell it. That's the hold time in months. The next thing that we look at is the interest rate. So we want to enter an interest rate that our lender will be charging us. And keep in mind, if you're gonna be a cash buyer, you won't have these things because you're buying it in cash. But assuming you're gonna be using a lender for this, you'll have these items. So for the interest rate, let's say my lender gives me 8% interest. So I could just write 8 right there. It auto-populates the percentage. The next thing we look at are the points that they charge. If you're unfamiliar with points, all points are a percentage of the loan amount from your lender that your lender will charge you up front. So for example, if your lender is going to lend you $100,000 and they charge 1 point, that means they will charge you 1% of that $100,000, which is $1,000 upfront right when you buy the property. That's an upfront cost that they charge. Every lender is different. I would definitely make sure to ask your lender to see what they charge before you use them. And just for simplicity's sake, let's say this lender charges me 2% points. So they're gonna charge me 2% of the loan amount, which auto calculates in this case to $1,800. The next thing that we're gonna look at is the service fee. Now, some hard money lenders will charge a service fee, some won't. The concept is very similar to points. They're basically an upfront cost, but it's not determined by the loan amount. It's just an upfront cost that you have to pay. Some lenders have it, some don't. So again, be sure to ask your hard money lenders first before you work with them. And let's just say this lender charges me a service fee of $1,500, which is common. So that's where you enter it here, and it just auto-populates right here in the gray section. So everything we've entered so far, that is all the money cost information for your primary lender, your hard money lender most likely. Now, I have 2 extra sections that you can use if you plan to use a gap lender. If you don't know what a gap lender is, let me explain it very briefly. So for example, let's say you have a hard money lender that's going to be lending you 90% of the purchase price for your home. That means the down payment is 10%. Now, you can either come up with that 10% down payment with your own money, or you could choose to raise that 10% down payment from another person, like an individual. And this individual would be a private money lender. It's just an individual with money who wants to make a return on their money. And you can get them to fund the 10% down payment so that you can essentially walk out of there, no money out of your pocket. So you would find an individual to fund the gap, the difference, which is the 10% down payment in this case. And if you decided to go that route, I have 2 extra sections for you. So you also have the gap loan amount and the gap interest rate. So you can always adjust these numbers depending on what you're asking for a gap lender. But what I typically do is this. I take the difference between the purchase price and the loan amount, which gets me the down payment. And I also add all the closing cost, and I add all the rehab costs. That's all the stuff that I'm looking for funding from a gap lender typically. So if I press enter, so notice that I would be seeking $46,000 from a gap lender, from an individual to help me cover the down payment, all the closing costs, and all the rehab costs. Now that's just usually my style. You can definitely mix it up. You can choose to ignore the closing costs or ignore the rehab costs, and you can just say, hey, I need money for the down payment only. You could do that. This is completely flexible. You just have to adjust the formula. This is the formula that's already in this sheet. I'm just gonna leave this here, but you can always adjust it. Like if you wanted to remove the closing cost, this little blue one right here, 6,000, you could always take this and you could delete, and now you would only want to raise $40,000 because you said I can cover the $6,000 closing costs myself. But I'm going to undo that because this is what I typically do. I try to raise money for the down payment, closing cost, and the rehab cost. And I typically round up just a little bit, just in case I need extra. So the other thing that we look at is the gap interest rate. So most people will not lend you money for free. A private money lender who's gonna be lending you money for the gap, they're usually gonna want some type of return on their money, most likely. Unless they're like a really close family member and they just wanna see you succeed, which is pretty awesome. Now the interest rate that you're going to provide for that gap lender, it's completely negotiable between you and that gap lender. Just for purposes of entering a number, let me just call this 8%. Let's say I pay my gap lender 8% return. So that's where we enter it here. And this is an annualized return. This is not a flat fee return. And if you enter this gap interest rate right here, this is an annualized rate, just like this interest rate right here. And what that essentially means is the longer you hold on to the property, the more interest you're gonna have to pay. There's also something called a flat interest rate that some investors pay their private money lenders. I typically don't do that. And what a flat interest rate means is that you're gonna be paying the same amount of interest to that lender regardless of how long you hold on to the property. For me, I don't like to do that. I like to do an annualized rate so that however long I hold on to the property, that's how much I'm gonna pay them. It just makes more sense to me. So now that we have all this information, you can see that everything else auto-populated. So we have the total gap interest that we would pay the private money lender at the end of the deal. So if this actually took 6 months, this is what you pay that gap lender at the end of it. And we also have the total interest, which is pretty much all the interest that you're gonna be paying to both your gap lender and your main lender. Then we have the total money cost, which also includes any points or service fees that you'd have to pay. So as you can see here, for these particular numbers, the total money cost is $8,000, $8,700. Now, how we actually use this sheet to calculate our max offer, now this is where we get into it. So as you can see here in this bright green, it shows a max offer of $207,000. Now, this isn't our max offer yet. We still have to do one more slight adjustment, and let me explain why. Right now, this is showing our max offer, and all these numbers as far as money cost and everything else is based off a purchase price of $100,000. And what that means is that this loan amount is based off that $100,000. This gap loan amount is based off that $100,000. And that's not an accurate number. I just put $100,000 to have a number. Now, what we wanna do here is we wanna get this purchase price number and this max offer number as close to each other as humanly possible. So what I will do from here, again, you're not gonna wanna change this green number. That auto-populates. What you do wanna change is this purchase price so that all these interest rate numbers are reflective of what's accurate. So I'm gonna change this 100,000 to 207,000 because I wanna match this number, and watch what happens to this green number in max offer. Notice how it shifted from 207,000 to 201,000. I wanna get it closer, so now I'm gonna say 201,000. And boom. So now they're in the same 100,000s, they're both 201,000. Doesn't have to be perfectly accurate, but now that you know that this is an accurate max offer, and you know that because look, the loan amount, it's based off of this purchase price. And this based off of this purchase price. So this is now an accurate number, but let me show you how that was calculated. So how you calculate this max offer, it takes the ARV, this $300,000, it adds any purchase commission credit that you would have gained if you were a realtor representing yourself in a purchase. It also subtracts the minimum profit that you wanna make on this property, which again, was calculated up here. And it subtracts the total cost that you have for this property, and you arrive to that number by adding the property costs with the money costs. So as you can see, we worked backwards. So if I click this max offer of how it's calculated, you see it starts with the ARV right here, this 300,000. It adds the possible commission credit that you would have gained. It subtracts your minimum profit that you want, and it subtracts all the potential costs that you anticipate. So when you do that calculation, you get your max offer. And you just have to make sure that this is the same as this, or at least as close as possible. And you see right here, if you buy this home at around $201,000, you will profit 30 grand, roughly. So that is exactly how I calculate my max offer and how you can do it too. If you want to use this exact same calculator that I use to calculate your own max offers, go to the description below. I linked it there so that you can use it yourself. Just make sure to download it or save a copy of it into your own drive because you can't edit the version if you just click the link. One of the most simple yet accurate ways to estimate the rehab cost is to utilize the square footage of the home. What I have discovered is that there are different tiers of rehabs. There are more expensive rehabs and there are lighter rehabs. And I'm gonna teach them all to you, but each one is determined by the square footage of the home and a dollar per square foot amount. At the lowest tier, we have something called the cleanup rehab. For the cleanup rehab, you're gonna be estimating somewhere between $5 a square foot and $10 a square foot. These are the type of homes that are in very good condition already, where not a lot of things need to be done. It's mostly just a cleanup. So maybe you have to fix up the carpet a little bit, maybe there's some paint touch-ups, maybe there are some light repairs such as light switches or outlets or different little things like that. But for the most part, these homes are in great condition and they are ready to be sold at that after repair value. And overall, the home is pretty modern as is. So whenever you're analyzing a deal and the home is in this kind of condition, you're gonna be estimating somewhere between $5 a square foot and $10 a square foot for the cleanup rehab. And if you are brand new and you don't know how to gauge whether it's a $5 a square foot rehab or a $10 a square foot rehab, just budget on the higher side just to be safe. And if you don't understand what I mean by this $5 a square foot or this $10 a square foot, let me explain it real briefly. Let's say when you're analyzing a deal, you want to budget for the repairs of $10 a square foot for the cleanup rehab. Then let's say that the home is 1,000 square feet. That means if you want to get the rehab estimate, you take 1,000 square feet of the home and you multiply it by $10 a square foot. That totals to $10,000 for the rehab estimate. So that's the first tier, the cleanup rehab. The next tier of a rehab is the lipstick rehab. For the lipstick rehab, you're gonna be estimating $15 a square foot. This type of rehab is slightly more extensive than the cleanup rehab. The general idea for the lipstick rehab is to keep as many of the existing items in the home as possible and then just updating them or making them a little bit nicer. And these things can even be as simple as painting over the kitchen cabinets or even refinishing the wood floors. And if that doesn't really make a lot of sense for you, think of actual lipstick. So if you put lipstick on your lips stay the same. So you're keeping the things that are already there, the lips, and you're just putting lipstick on it. You're just covering it. You're painting over it. That same concept is going to apply for these lipstick rehabs. You're just keeping what's there, making them nicer. You're not really replacing much. And again, you're budgeting $15 a square foot. So if a home is 1,000 square feet and the lipstick rehab is $15 a square foot, you are gonna be budgeting $15,000 for that lipstick rehab. And one thing I want you to keep in mind, not just for the lipstick rehab, but for all the rehabs, is that whenever you're renovating a property, the goal of renovating the property is just to get it up to the condition of the comps. So for example, if the current property that you're analyzing has tile countertops in the kitchen, and in your eyes, you're thinking, oh, that's so outdated, that's so old, I gotta get rid of that and I gotta replace it with quartz or granite or whatever it is. And the thing I'll say about that is look at the comps first. So look at other similar properties that have sold, otherwise known as comparable properties, to gauge your ARV, what the home is going to be worth after fixing it up. And if you notice that all of the comps that you're using to determine the ARV also have tile kitchen countertops, then you likely don't need to upgrade the kitchen countertops. Because if you want to be efficient with your money in your renovations, all you need to worry about is copying the comps. You simply have to bring your current property up to the level and the standard of the comps. That's it. Nothing less, nothing more. Another thing I want you to keep in mind, particularly with the lipstick rehab, is you have to know what price point you're at. You have to know what type of home you're in. So if you're looking at an entry-level home, which are the homes that first-time home buyers likely will be buying, then I'm sure you can get away with a lipstick rehab. Just refinishing certain things, keeping the cabinets as is, keeping things for the most part the same. But if you are looking at a luxury home, so a home on the higher end of the market, it's going to be a lot harder to get away with a lipstick rehab. You're likely gonna have to spend a lot more for these luxury projects to get those higher sale prices. The next tier of rehab is called the full interior rehab. And in my personal experience, you should estimate somewhere between $20 a square foot and $25 a square foot. And I think that this will largely depend on your individual market. But the basic premise of this rehab is that you replace everything. So different than the lipstick rehab, because as we know, in the lipstick rehab, we're trying to keep as much as we we possibly can, and then refinish certain things or paint up things, refinish floors, stuff like that. With the full interior rehab, you're trying to replace everything. So if you have the kitchen cabinets, you want to replace it, put new ones in. You're going to replace the flooring, you're going to replace the countertops, you're going to replace the bathroom vanities, everything in the house you want to update to modern standard. That's what the full interior rehab is. And when you're making these repair estimates, keep in mind that it also depends on what's already in the house, what's already existing there. If the kitchen doesn't have cabinets, well, you can't do a lipstick rehab because there's nothing to refinish. There's no cabinets to paint over. You have to get new ones. And similarly, let's say the kitchen cabinets are just shot. They're there, but they're horrible. And even if you were to paint over it, it would just look so bad that you have to get new ones. So as you are determining which tier of a rehab makes most sense, just make sure you understand what's already in the home and what's existing. So if a home has 1,000 square feet and you are estimating somewhere between $20 a square foot and $25 a square foot, you're going to be estimating a rehab budget of $20,000 to $25,000. And this will largely depend on your market. I know for my market in Fresno, California, I'm using the $25 a square foot. At first, I did use the $20 a square foot when I didn't really know what I was doing, but as I flipped more and more houses, I've seen that in my market, $25 a square foot for a full interior rehab makes more sense, just based on my past projects. So in my opinion, you can do one of two things to estimate for the full interior rehab. You can either estimate on the higher end to be conservative using the $25 a square foot, like I do, or you can just ask other investors in your area what they estimate for their rehabs and what their rehabs usually cost, just to get a reference. But whatever estimate you choose to use for the full interior rehab, it's going to determine the next tier. For the next tier, we call it the full rehab. Now the full rehab is everything that we discussed in the full interior rehab, plus one big ticket item. And when I say a big ticket item, if you don't know what that is, I'm talking about a pool, an AC, or even a roof. And the way you estimate for the full rehab is you're gonna take whatever you used for the full interior rehab. So for me, I used $25 a square foot for my full interior rehab. And then you're gonna add $5 a square foot to whatever you used prior. So for example, let's say I'm analyzing a deal for myself and the home, in my opinion, needs a full interior rehab. And also I see that the roof is really old and needs to be repaired or replaced right away. I will then estimate $30 a square foot for the rehab. And I get to that $30 a square foot by taking the initial $25 a square foot plus $5 a square foot because of that big ticket item, the roof. Now, like I said before, the big ticket items are mainly gonna be a pool, a roof, or an AC unit. But there are other items that I personally like to budget extra for as big ticket items. And these are things like if I know any foundation repairs need to be made, any big ones, any big electrical changes that need to be made, any big plumbing issues, any holes in the wall or like water damage or mold. These type of things I also count as big ticket items as well. And for any new big ticket item that you are going to anticipate, you just add an extra $5 a square foot. So for example, for that same scenario, if I'm planning to buy a home, analyzing the deal, I notice it needs a full interior rehab, but it also needs a new roof and it needs a new pool or something is massively wrong with the pool, then instead of budgeting $30 a square foot, I'm now budgeting $35 a square foot. And again, I got to that $35 a square foot by taking the $25 a square foot plus 5 because there are two big ticket items that need to be addressed, the roof and the pool. This is exactly how I estimate my repair costs for any home I offer on. I want to warn you that as of January 2022, PropStream stopped showing MLS data for non-disclosure states. So if you are planning to use PropStream to determine ARV on these homes and you are in a non-disclosure state, I want you to take everything I say with a grain of salt because I'm using PropStream to calculate ARVs and to comp properties. And if you do not know whether or not you're in a disclosure state or a non-disclosure state, I'm going to put up the list of non-disclosure states on the screen for you to view and for you to pause the screen just so you can look at before I get into this video. That being said, even if you are in a non-disclosure state, you can still learn a ton from this video and you can apply the concepts of comping out properties to determine ARV, whether or not you're gonna use PropStream or if you're gonna use the MLS or some other platform. So everything I will teach in this video, you can still apply. You just cannot do it on PropStream if you are in a non-disclosure state. So let's get right into it. So what you're looking at right now on the screen is PropStream. If you've never used it, this is exactly what it looks like. And just to find a property to get an ARV on, let me give it an example property right now. So I'm gonna use a property that I'm familiar with, 056 East Mono Street, just as an example. So I'm gonna use this property. It's a property in Fresno, my market. These concepts that I'm going to be teaching can be applied to any market though. So if you're going to be entering the property address, you enter it in, you press enter, and then you come up to this screen right here. Once you're at this screen, you're going to click details right here. Then the next thing that you are going to be looking at to comp a property and find the ARV is this right here, comparables and nearby listings. So all we're doing is trying to find recently sold homes that are similar to our property, similar in specs as far as bedroom count, bathroom count. And the reason why we are trying to find homes like this is because we want to know what our home is going to be worth after we fix it up so that we know what it'll sell for once we fix it up. That's the whole purpose of this exercise. That's what we're doing. So I just wanted to explain that before I dive right in. So now we're at this page, comparables and nearby listing. So the first thing that you can see immediately is you have a list of 7 properties that you can look at. It's going to be different for every single property because some properties might have more comparables than others. But we're looking at 7, and how these are filtered are by these results you see right here. These are automatically filtered to things that have sold a year prior. So as of today, as I'm recording this, it is March 3rd, 2022, and it pulls all the homes that have sold since March 8th, 2021. So it goes back an entire year, and that's what these properties are filtered by. They are also filtered by square footage, and how these are auto-populated is it takes the square feet of the subject property. So this is our property that we're trying to find the ARV on. The square footage on this property is 752 square feet, as you can see right here. And how this square footage is auto-populated is it takes plus or minus 20% of that square footage. So it takes 752 square feet and it goes plus 20% of it to get to the 902 number, and then it goes minus 20% of that to get to the 602 number. The next thing that auto-populates in PropStream is the distance away from the subject property. So right now it's filtered to 0.5 miles, meaning any property that has sold that is similar, that is sold within 0.5 miles of our subject property, it will show up in these search results right here. So these are just what's auto-populated. And the first thing that I try to do is be super specific with these search results and make them more specific than they already are. So instead of doing a year range, I immediately try to find the properties within the last 3 months. So I'm trying to find comparable sales of homes that have sold within 3 months. So if I'm trying to do that, all I do is I click this right here, the date range at the beginning, and I shorten it to 3 months ago. So right now it goes by month, so I'm gonna move it from March 2021, and I'm gonna move it to 3 months prior, which I'm just gonna click this 9 times. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and it moves it to December. And if it's March 8th, I'm going to December 8th. So I moved the date range to find homes within 3 months. And this is the first thing that I do because I'm trying to find recent comparable sales. And if there are no good comparable sales that happened in the past 3 months that I can find on PropStream, which is the case here, if you look at the screen, no rows show up. So there's no properties that have sold within the last 3 months that PropStream deems by these characteristics to be good comparable homes. So the next thing I do is I make the date a little bit extended out to move it from 3 months sold to 6 months sold. So now I go back to this date and I'm gonna go backwards 3 months. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm gonna go to the 8th. So now I'm looking at homes that have sold within the last 6 months that are within plus or minus 20% square footage of our property and within 0.5 mile distance. So once I have that, I always try to make the searches more specific. So I'll even go to the bedroom count and the bathroom count to try to match our subject property. So what I'm looking at right here, I'm looking at a 2-bedroom home and a 1-bathroom home. This is our subject property. And what I'll do in the search results right here is I'll just change it right here. I'll go to bedrooms. I'll look for specifically from a 2-bedroom home to a 2-bedroom home. So I'm specifically trying to target a 2-bedroom home. If I was okay with looking at up to 3-bedroom homes for comparables, I would change this to a 3. But because I'm trying to find specifically properties that are similar to our property and the most like our property, I'm just gonna try to stick with the same bedroom count of 2. Same thing with the bathrooms. This was a 1 bathroom in the home. I'm going to try to stick with that. So I'm gonna go from 1 bathroom to 1 bathroom. So what we're looking at here are 2-bed, 1-bath homes that have sold within the last 6 months that are also plus or minus 20% of the square footage and within 0.5-mile radius of the home. So what I do from here, I think the first thing that I really do is I just look at these price points just to see what these things have sold for. So what I'm looking at here is a potential comparable home that sold for $155,000, one sold for $235,000, one sold for $210,000, one sold for $175,000. So you can see that the range is quite large. So the first thing that I usually start with are one of two things. I'll either start with the highest comparable home, because typically the home that is sold for the highest amount has the most upgrades to it, which means that it's most likely gonna be a good comparable home to figure out what a home is gonna be worth after you fix it up. So typically I'll start and look at the highest price comparables first, but another thing that I'll do is I'll look at the map, because I want to see where these homes are located just to make sure that they're actually in a similar area as my home. So I wanna make sure that these zip codes are similar, because I don't wanna compare a home in a different zip code than my own. So if any of these homes were in a different zip code, which does happen often, I would be very hesitant about using them as comps unless they just seemed like a really good comp. But for the most part, I'm sticking within the same zip code to compare homes. So I'm looking at these prices, I'm looking at the zip codes, and I'm also looking at the map. And I look at the map personally because I know my area, and sometimes homes are worth more when they're on a different side of a main street versus being on the other side. So that just comes with experience, but I guess if you're just starting out, just stick with looking at the highest price points and looking at the zip codes to making sure that you're in the same zip code. So again, the first thing that I'm gonna be doing to try to find a good ARV comp is I'm gonna look at the highest comp I can find, which I can see is 235,000 right here. If I had a big list of comps, like if I was looking at 20 comps, then you can always filter it by the amount sold. So if I click this thing right here, you can filter it by the amount sold, and you can see that it filters from lowest to highest. And you can click it again just to filter it from highest to lowest. So you can always do that, but it automatically filters to this option right here. How do I go back? Oh, it automatically filters to the distance of like whatever is closest to the home, but you can always change what these homes are ordered by just to make it easier on you to look at. So if I wanted to, I can change the amount because I want to look at the homes that have sold highest first. So I'm gonna look at this $235,000 comp, and I can look at the details by clicking details. And then the first thing that I want to make sure I see is I want to make sure I see this MLS detail option. If I can see that there is an MLS details option, I know that this home was sold on the MLS, which makes it a good comp, a comp that I want to use. If you ever pull up a potential comparable home and it does not have this MLS details option, I typically don't use it. It just means that a home is sold on public record, but not on the MLS. And the reason why I stick to the MLS comps is because that's what you're using when you eventually list the home. So for example, let's say you fix up a home. It's all fixed up and you're going to list the home. How you determine the price is you're going to rely on your realtor. They're going to give you an idea of what your home can be sold for, and they're going to be using the comparable homes on the MLS, not public record. So if you want to identify a good ARV from the start, it is much smarter to use the MLS comps versus just public record comps. And if you're still a little bit confused on that, let me just show you exactly what I mean. So let me go back to the other tab and let me pull up a different comp that I believe is not on the MLS. And I just know this because I've done this comp already. But if I pull up this one right here, as soon as I pull it up, I want you to pay attention to the screen. Notice how you do not see MLS details right here like the other one, because on this one, you see MLS details. On this one, you do not see MLS details, and there's no pictures. And usually when it's on the MLS, you're gonna see pictures as well. Not all the time. But if I do not see that this home was sold on the MLS, I am not using it as a comp. Maybe I'll keep the price point of this home in mind just to give me an idea of what the home might be worth, but I'm definitely not gonna be using it as a good comp for the ARV. So make sure that when you comp using PropStream, that you have this MLS details section. This is exactly what tells you whether or not a home was sold on the MLS, and if it's sold on the MLS, it's going to be a good potential comp to use, as long as everything else checks out. And here's everything else. Once I make sure that this home was sold on the MLS, the next thing that I'm gonna be doing is I'm gonna click on the pictures. I wanna make sure that I'm looking at a home that is either fixed up or modern enough so that I know that I can fix my property up to that condition and demand the same price that that sold for. So if I look at the pictures, outside looks pretty nice, you know, there has grass. Exterior looks pretty nice. Nice red door. Let's see, this shot looks nice. Yeah, this looks really nice. So like, for my market at least, every market's different, but this looks like a recently flipped home, to be honest, unless the person just took care of it extremely well. And so we see these nice countertops. The cabinets look all new. Stainless steel appliances. We hear lighting looks good. Windows even look new just from the pictures. They might not be, but let's just keep looking at these pictures. So you can determine for yourself what you kind of see in this, but from what I see in my market, this is what a flip looks like. So this is what a home looks like after you fix it up. And I don't know whether or not it was flipped or not. It probably was, but even if it wasn't, it doesn't matter. So if I just keep looking through all these pictures, I wanna make sure the whole home is in this kind of condition, because sometimes they're not. But for the most part, it looks like the home is in great condition overall. The backyard isn't fixed up, it's just no grass, which doesn't mean it's a bad thing. All that tells you, if you see a backyard with no grass and the home is on like super nice on the inside, it means that you can do the same thing to your home. So you can fix up the front yard and the inside super nice, and you can probably do nothing really to the backyard if it looks like this, and you can still demand the price that it sold for. So that's all I'm gonna be looking at. So I see this. This actually is a really good ARV comp, and I'm gonna go back to this screen. So what I'm doing now is I saw that the home sold for $235,000. I also wanna see where it's located on the map, just to make sure for myself that it's in a similar area, because sometimes they're not in an actual comparable area. So we're still in the same zip code. This is number 2, so I can go to number 2 on the map. The red is our subject property. So if I zoom in a little bit by clicking the plus sign, I can see that the subject property is right here on Mono Street or Mono Avenue. I zoom out, and the comparable home that we were looking at was on number 2, right here on Balch. And it doesn't cross any main like intersections. And for me, like I know my area pretty well. That's pretty much like the exact same area as this thing. So in my eyes, this is a really good comp. I also wanna look at when it actually sold. So this thing sold on 9/17/2021. Again, like I said before, as of today, it's 3/8/2022 today. And so this sold within the last 6 months, about 6 months ago, actually. And so 6 months ago, a recently renovated property might sell for $235,000. And so what that tells me is, if I were to buy this property, as far as the one we're analyzing, 4056 East Mono Street, if I were to buy this today, and if I were to fix it up to at least the condition that's similar to what we're looking at right here, that means I would know that my home would sell for roughly around at least the $235,000 that we were looking at. And the reason why I say at least is because as of right now, in this market, homes have been climbing like crazy in price. So I know that if I were to fix this up now, I could demand $235,000. And of course the market can change, but probably not that much that fast. And I could, it might end up being a lower price, but if I were a betting man, I would say that the ARV of this home is around $235,000. So even though I got lucky on my first comp, and the first and the highest comp was the best comp, like a really good ARV comp, I still want to make sure I look at the others just to see what they sold for and just to make sure that everything makes sense. Because for example, if I'm looking at this and I see that this home sold for $235,000, super nice condition, and then maybe I see another one that, like, what if this $175,000 was in the same kind of condition? If it was in the same kind of condition, super nice, renovated, and it sold for $175,000 around the same date, 9/16 versus 9/17, I'd be a little bit more hesitant about kind of figuring out what the ARV is. So I wanna look at everything just to make sure that I do my due diligence and I do my research accordingly. So let's click the next highest one, the 4027 East Liberty Avenue. It sold in October, sold for $210,000. And if you scroll a little bit more, you can see that the square footage is roughly the same. Year built's even the same. The first comp we looked at is actually the same subdivision, which is great. And I'm finding this information by just scrolling a little bit to the left. And it's 0.4 miles away for the second one. So let's click the details on this one. So click the details. Again, what do we look for first? The MLS details. And we got lucky, there's another one. So another one's marked as MLS detail, so it was on the MLS. And if you ever want to look at the description of the home, you can see the description that the realtor had listed right here for the marketing remarks, just to give you an idea of what it might look like. And it looks like the pictures aren't loading. So look at this. If I click the pictures from the MLS are not transferring, but no worries there. What you do now is you're going to copy this right here, copy the address, Command C or Control C, whatever device you're on computer-wise. You're going to add a new tab. You're going to paste what you just copied. You press enter. So you're Googling it essentially. And then I just like to look at Zillow. So Zillow usually has the pictures when PropStream doesn't. So if PropStream doesn't have pictures, oops, not like that one. If PropStream doesn't have pictures like what we were just looking at, just copy the address, put it on Google, find it on Zillow, and then you can look at the pictures. So let's look at these pictures. Really nice home. Again, actually let's start from the beginning, just so I can give you my perspective. Looks nice. The front yard is not, like there's no landscaping, so the landscaping is not that nice. It looks okay. Look closer, okay. Not as nice as the first one that we looked at for sure. The flooring looks nice, but I don't know if it was recently done. It doesn't look like it was. Lighting's not as good. It's more yellowy. Blinds look old. Let's see. Not bad condition. Definitely not bad condition, but it's not like the first one, as you can probably tell. And so I'm looking at this. This looks older. Was that green? Why is that green? What is that? I don't know why it's green. Just keep looking. Okay. Countertops look older for sure than at least what we looked at the past. That might be like a granite or something like granite. The appliance doesn't look as nice, but that's not a good angle of it. This hood is not modern. So these appliances don't look as modern either as the first one. Yeah, so we're looking at that right here. Cabinets are still nice condition. You probably can make it look nicer just with upgraded knobs or something like that. That looks outdated. We don't see these colors in modern flips or modern colors anymore. Those are like, that's green. Usually in my market, I see a lot of light grays, as of right now. Of course, that'll change if you're watching this 10 years from now, but so, older, all the lighting's older. This looks older, the tile, not as new. That's outdated. Flooring looks nicer though. That probably can be like buffed or something to make it look nice and new. This is all outdated. So it's like nice condition, but it's not modern for sure. Not up to modern standards, not up to that like HGTV level standard. Backyard. Backyard's kind of the same thing as what we saw before on the other one. Look at these other pictures. That's odd. Okay. And I'm just getting an idea of what everything looks like. Oh, is that a carport? Oh, it has a carport. So it has like if you don't know what a carport is, it's where you can park a car and there's a structure that's like a garage, but it's not a garage and it's outside. Oh, it has a carport. That's pretty cool. So I don't think the other one had one, but it was definitely not as nice of condition as the other one. So if we go back to what we were looking at, the one without pictures on PropStream, and we go back to the price. So this sold for $210,000, the thing that we just looked at, all those pictures. The nice one that we saw first sold for $235,000, and it was in much better condition than this first one. So in my opinion, this price and this price combined makes sense. Like it's telling the same story. So it's saying that if this home that we just saw, the $210,000 home, if it was nicer and in better condition, using logic, if you fixed it up a little bit more, made it more modern, it should sell for around that $235,000 number. So that's all I am doing here. My best comp so far, and what I think it's gonna be the best comp because it's the highest price, it sold for $235,000, and we found that off the bat, but I still wanted to look at the others to make sure that they're still telling the same story. So let's look at this other one, this $175,000, the next highest. So let's go to the details. Next thing, it was on the MLS. So you can see this MLS detail option, which is great, so we can use it. So let's look at the pictures. Okay, so it's just exterior pictures, it looks like. Doesn't really tell much of a story, not a lot of pictures, so let's look at the description. So when I don't have a lot of pictures, I usually rely on the description from the realtor. So the realtor said, cute 2-bedroom and 1-bathroom, single family home, perfect for an investor or first-time home buyer. So typically when someone says perfect for an investor, I usually don't expect it to be like a super nice renovated home. When someone says perfect for an investor, usually it's like a beat up home. So I'm gonna take that and like as a hint, and it says with a 2-car detached garage on that kind of lot, waiting to be restored. Okay, so it's saying the home is waiting to be restored to its splendor, meaning it needs work. Like someone needs to come in and fix the home up. And that's also probably why they don't have a lot of pictures up. So it's drive by, submit your offer. Okay, so what we just found out from here is this. So we go back to this first tab and we find out that this thing sold for $175,000, the thing that we just looked at as far as the marketing remarks in the description. And we know from that description and kind of the pictures by assumption, we know that the home needs work. It's made for the investor, meaning it needs work, it needs that tender loving care or TLC, as you might have heard. And it's also telling the same story as we found from the other 2 properties. So if you were to put a lot of work into this home and a lot of love, you probably could get the $235,000 price point. So everything so far is telling the same story. Let me just look at this one just to confirm the last one. I think we already did in this video, but we just go to the details. And the last one sold for $155,000 and there's no MLS detail, so I'm not gonna use it. It's not an MLS comp, it's just a public record comp, so I'm not gonna use it, so exit out. So what I found out from this property, just looking at this property right here, I can very confidently say that the ARV of this home is right around $235,000. Of course, as more time passes, that might differ and you might get higher price point ARV or maybe a little bit lower, depending on what happens with the market. But if I were to decide today, if I were to buy this property today, I could reasonably assume that if I were to fix this property up to at least this condition that we were looking at, then I could get a price point of $235,000 when I sell it. So that's exactly how I calculate my ARV. And again, whether or not you're using PropStream or not, you can apply these same exact concepts, whether using the MLS, Zillow, or something else. Like just make sure you're looking at like properties and you start super specific, and if you can't find any comps that are super specific, you slowly broaden out, and you broaden out again and again. So that's how you find comps to get a proper ARV on a home. Hopefully you learned a lot from this one, and hopefully I was able to break it down enough so that you can understand this really easily. I really hope you got a lot of value from that video. And also, if you want help to grow your real estate business, whether you're brand new or if you already got deals under your belt, click on the link in the description, fill out the application, and someone from my team is gonna reach out to you. Peace.